So welcome everybody to another of the Rural Center Lunch series. Today we have Godfrey Baldacchino visiting from UPEI. We're very fortunate. Godfrey completed his PhD at Warwick, and he's the Canada Research Chair in Island Studies and a prof in Sociology and Anthropology at UPEI. He maintains a position in the Department of Sociology at the University of Malta, in Malta, where he's from, and he has a house there. So his talk is called Bridging Two Solitudes, the Contribution of Island Studies to Rural Studies. And I think it will be very entertaining. He almost refused to produce any PowerPoint slides. He wanted it to be very dynamic. So I have great expectations. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. People usually reserve the applaud for the end, not for the beginning. But I don't mind. You can still applaud at the end, of course. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Martha and Dietra, for making this possible. Thank you for coming. It's Friday afternoon. It's beautiful outside, so I really appreciated you being here this time. To our colleagues on the other campuses in Newfoundland and elsewhere, I'm not sure, welcome. I hope you're okay and you can hear me and manage my accent, which is sometimes a source of difficulty to Canadians, especially Maritimers. This is my first lecture as a Canadian citizen. I got my citizenship yesterday. See? Clap again. That's great. This is doing wonderful. Fantastic. And applause every 3 minutes. Later, when I'm done. And the idea of the session, it's been at the back of my mind for some time because, coming from a certain place, and I'll be showing you some images of that place, and coming to Canada, of course, there's an enormous difference, even in the breadth and the scope and the whole ambience, the whole landscape. I have a visitor from Malta right now, staying at my house in Charlottetown, and his first impression of Prince Edward Island is that it's empty. There's nobody here. That's what he told me yesterday. I took him round. There's nobody here. If a few Maltese discover this island, they'll build it up. They'll transform it into a construction zone. And he may be true, may be right. This is my country. This is my other country. I have to be careful now how I speak. So this is Malta. These are the Maltese islands. They are, of course, a sovereign state. This is a country. This has a seat in the United Nations. We have a president of the Republic. I had to swear the oath to the Queen again yesterday, but I don't mind. 3 islands. You can gauge the size of the island by looking at the runway, right? The airstrip. So the main island is 7 runways long. There are 400,000 people living there. So it's the 3rd most densely populated country in the world. And as a Maltese, I would be born in a particular locale. I was born somewhere over here. I went to my first school over here. I went to my second school over here. And then my parents moved house over here. And then when I got married, I bought a house over here. This is where my current house is. So all this, as you can see, you'll laugh, of course, because we're talking about very short distances. Even though this part of the island, since it's so far away from the capital city, it's called Siberia. This district is called Siberia because it's far away. Everything is relative. We're here to talk about rural issues. You can take a look at the west and the southwestern side of the main island. And the other island up there, it's called Gozo. It's still primarily rural. But of course, the challenges associated with the rural existence on Malta have absolutely nothing to do with the Canadian one, right? There's no issue, for example, with distance. You can walk across the island from the southeast corner to the northwest corner in 11 hours. Walk, not drive. So everything is, the challenges are still there, but they're of a different nature. The particular challenge for Malta and the Maltese Islands is, of course, that it's an island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. So the closest landmass would be Sicily, which is about 60, 70 miles away. And therefore, transportation becomes a key issue, which enables us to develop in a certain way, to export our manufacturers, to bring in our tourists, and what have you. Transportation is a very important infrastructure for islands. So let's come back to the Canadian landscape and acknowledge the inspiration behind this talk. I'm based at the University of Prince Edward Island. The university pioneered the institutionalization of island studies back in 1985 with the setting up of an Institute of Island Studies, with which I'm privileged to be associated. But apart from that, of course, out of PEI, I have a few good friends in high places, including Memorial University. The Harris Center has been one of my regular haunts over these past years. I have a good friend there. And through him, we have been associated with two fairly interesting initiatives. They're different, of course. They have different constituencies. But it's remarkable in the sense that their policy foci, their policy emphasis, has been strikingly similar. One is the North Atlantic Forum, which is basically an association of North Atlantic islands, ranging from PEI on the west through Newfoundland, Greenland, Iceland, Svalbard, the Faroes, down to the Isle of Man, some of the Scottish islands, and Bornholm in Denmark, Gotland in Sweden. There are so many commonalities that we share, apart from the geographical zone. And the second, of course, is the so-called CIRF, Canadian Rural Revitalization Foundation, which is concerned with the development and sustainability of rural settlements across Canada. Myself, Rob Greenwood, who's the director of the Harris Center, we had this wild idea many years ago of trying to get the NAF and the CIRF together for the same conference. And we managed to do that. That's the first time I met Deetra, back in 2005, I think, at a remote place called Twillingate in northern Newfoundland. That's where I met Judith as well. And we had this conference, great vibes, lots of very stimulating ideas, and many of these ideas are transferable from islands to rural studies or the other way around. So this is based on that experience, and this is also based on the book that has emerged from that conference. So this is in my way as well of putting in a spiel there in favor of this wonderful publication I have been privileged to co-edit with Rob Greenwood and Lawrence Felt, who are both at Memorial University. So what's all this about? Let's get some of our parameters clear, first of all. It's very easy to have a litany of woe about islands and rural spaces. Most of this would be fairly accepted and understood by most of you. Hi, Pat. It's all right. We're talking about spaces that tend to be physically isolated. They are away from whatever that from may be. The closest mainland, the closest metropolitan center, the closest railway station, the closest harbor, the closest road, sometimes, if we talk about northern communities. And therefore, they're challenged by transportation. Transportation is an absolutely key issue for these communities to be able to survive and thrive. Many of them also experience hemorrhages. Not in the medical sense. I have to remind myself that I'm surrounded by people who work in the medical profession. But they're bleeding talent, population, capital in the broad sense of the word. Finance capital, human capital, economic capital. It seems to be one direction, right? From the periphery to the center. And who's left? Well, who's left are the people who don't want to move, perhaps those who can't move for different reasons. And the understanding from the outside about these people, from the center to the periphery, is very often that these individuals are basking in naive and stifling parochialism. These are very conservative people. They don't want to change. They don't have the mechanism for changing. They're staunch defenders of the past, and perhaps they do that because they don't have a future. These are also places that are very much out of sight as far as political drama is concerned. They're not on the news so often, right? We suffer from the urban bias. The media does as well. From the mainland point of view, from the continental point of view, again, these rural spaces are resource pools. These are the areas from which we extract.